Well, it's 3:01. Looks like we have 68 participants, 69. They're going up as I speak, 70. A lot of participants on board. This is Tim McCoy. I'll be serving as the moderator and want to welcome you to our district Zoom meetings with the Southeast District staff and others that may have joined. Before we start, we'd like to provide a few reminders. Initially, we're going to ask everybody to mute audio and close your video so we have as little background noise as possible. And we're asking about closing the video so that we don't run into distortion problems with both sound and video that can happen if we have a lot of users on at the same time. In terms of the general format, we'll start out with some, the Director Douglas will provide a message. After that, we've got some agency-wide FAQs that we've been providing that I'll go through and ask those questions, and Jim will answer those. I think they'll help answer a lot of the general questions that people have. But then after that, we'll move to live questions. And so as we get into the FAQs, if you have a question that comes up, you can go ahead and start at that time. There's a couple of different ways. If you're familiar with Zoom and you've done video conferences before, you can use the raise your hand function on the participant list. And I will call on you, at which time you can turn on both your video and your sound if you're on Zoom and ask your question. Also, you can let me know through the chat box in Zoom if you have a question that you want to ask. And if you're on Zoom and the name that's showing is something other than your name, which does happen sometimes with some machines, and especially if you're joining by phone or if you're joining by an iPad, then I will call on you to turn on your video and ask audio and ask your question. If you're calling via phone, you can text your question to 402-429-8671. We'd ask you to provide your name and your division. Those are going to Christy Firestone, who's actually going to then send those to me through the chat box, and then we can call on you by name, and you can turn your sound on and ask your question from your phone. We want to hear your questions. After that, we'll close the meeting. If we have time, we will try to ask everybody to turn their video on at that point, see if we can see how many people we can see. I know that it'd be great if we could have everybody's video on the whole time, but with the number of people here, the ability to scroll through and see people gets pretty complicated. We have scheduled an hour for the meeting. We know your time's valuable, and we appreciate all of you participating in this meeting. And we will be recording all these Zoom meetings, and we'll provide a link and links to them on the agency staff page for later viewing. So with that, I think we will go ahead and start. I will stop the share of the screen and hand it over to Director Douglas.
Thanks, Tim, and hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for taking time today to participate in this meeting. We're going to try to accomplish several things in the meeting today. One of the things that we're going to accomplish is practice with meeting in this format, in this venue. I've participated in a lot of Zoom meetings over the last couple of weeks. Also, other teleconferencing platforms that exist out there with some of our federal partners. And one of the things that I'm observing is that there's certain kinds of collaboration and communication that actually are performed pretty well in teleconferencing. I think that it's one of the things that we're learning as we go through the current health situation that we have, is that we're going to need to be adaptable. And, as an agency, I think that we're pretty adaptable. We're also known to be innovative at the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. And all of that has been serving us well as we try to function in the current state of affairs. I want all of you to know that we appreciate everything that you do so much. And we often tell you that, but not often enough. And certainly under the current circumstances, you're having to try to serve the public with a lot of constraints, so to speak, and in a lot of different ways. And you're doing a great job. I'm somewhat surprised, but not totally surprised, that we've really not missed a beat at the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. We're still serving the public and functioning in very good fashion, even under the constraints and circumstances that we have. But of course, there's a lot of things that we'd like to do that we can't do. And there's a lot of opportunities that we're not inviting the public to do now that we will as time moves forward, especially in our parks arena. So today, besides getting a little practice with this kind of communicating, we want to provide some information, answer some questions, and hear what you have to say. You know, we do orientation sessions for new employees, and I meet personally with every one of our new employees. And there's many messages that I try to convey, and some of them are applicable to the message today. And one of those is, we want to do what we can to support you and to do whatever we can to help you do your job and do it well and do it better if possible. We also want you to know that we want to hear you. That's another message that I always convey. And when I say we want to hear you, I mean under whatever circumstance there is. If you have an idea on how to do something better, if you have a question about why we're doing something and how we decided to do that, if you have a question, and this goes for the whole year, you know, not just today. If you have an issue, we want to hear about that. So we want to hear you, and I hope today, after I get done talking, and we also answer some of our more common questions that we're getting, that you're not bashful in tuning in and giving us your thoughts on whatever you would like to give them on. You know, we've had to make some decisions, of course, already operating in the atmosphere that we're operating in. And I want you to know that we're always keeping your well-being and safety in mind as we make those decisions. Also, we're keeping the safety of the public that we serve in mind as we make those decisions. And we're making those decisions after great collaboration, not only internally, but with our governor's office, with our regional health directors, and all the other information that's pertinent for us to make those decisions. We also are regularly talking to our counterparts in all the other states and sharing ideas and concerns and solutions for the things that we have in front of us right now. So we're working on several plans, and some of those I'll talk about as we probably answer some questions. But again, thank you very much. And at this time, I guess I'll turn it back over to Tim.
All right. So I'll start with the frequently asked questions. The first question, is there a tentative date for when we can return to the office?
Well, we're working on what we're just, euphemistically calling a return to office plan. One thing that people need to think about as in returning to office is that not all of our office situations are the same. We have district offices, service center offices, and even within that cadre of offices, there's a lot of difference in how they're arranged and how many people are served out of that office and so on. We have offices associated with like the large parks like Ponca State Park and public service desks at those places. So as we think about returning more people to work, maybe you should know, if you don't, that we have a lot of people working from home, but we still have people working from our offices. And we've already started to make alterations to offices to make it safer for those employees. As we look at how we make it safer for employees to return to an office, there's many different things that we're doing. In some cases, we're altering the floor plans. In other cases, we're putting up plexiglass barriers. Currently, we're looking at some additional touchless hardware for restrooms and so on. We're looking at our air filtration system at the main headquarters in Lincoln. It's something that we may need to do at some of our district offices as well. You know, some of the information that exists right now concerning where most transmissions of virus are occurring boil down to most of that is occurring within confined spaces. And so looking at our air movement systems and filtration systems is something that might be important as we move forward. But getting back to the question itself, we don't have an exact date, and it will be a phased system, and it'll be on sort of an area by area basis because they're all a little bit different. Also, the return to work dates and conditions need to be thought of in two different contexts. One is before we start reserving the public out of those offices, and after we start serving the public out of those offices.
All right. Have there been discussions of when we start returning to the office, if it will be incrementally with only a percentage of staff returning?
Well, it will be incrementally for some of the reasons I was just talking about. Also, we have found that some of the people who are working from home are functioning quite well, and the functions of the position are being completed very well. So there may be some positions where people would like to work from home, and through analysis of the position, we decide that they could continue to work from home. In other cases, right now, for example, we're rotating people into the Lincoln office so that we don't have too many people in certain spaces at one time. And so there may be some more of that, and that rotation may change. So incrementally, yes.
As the state lifts restrictions, will NGPC be open to some employees working from home for various reasons, and what might those be?
Yeah, I started to touch on that, but yes, we'd be open to it. I think what we'll likely do is look at some of these on a case-by-case basis, and it'll be a consultation with the employee, with their supervisor, and an analysis of whether or not working from home suits the needs of not only the employee, but also of the agency.
Would the commission consider reasons of reduction of building use, lower carbon footprint, and more work output from employees and happier employees to allow those that want to continue to be able to work from home?
Well, I think that we probably would lean more heavily towards looking at the happier employee aspect of that question rather than the savings in utilities. I'm not certain that any kinds of reductions in office staff presence would result in that much utility savings. But certainly, as we do the analysis that I talked about on work from home, the well-being of the employee, including their happy quotient, will probably be part of that equation.
I know you touched on some of these, but what will be some of the changes that will happen to the office as people return to work?
Again, that needs to be thought of in the context of before we start serving the public again out of the office, and afterwards, because there's additional alterations that will need to be made in some instances after we start serving the public again. For example, at service counters, there may need to be plexiglass shields, for example. There may be some rearrangements of some of the service desks that we have right now. In the broader sense, again, knowing that there's a lot of differences between our office spaces, we'd be looking at distancing of employees. So there may be some additional floor space alterations and office space alterations. Again, the air movement that's happening within the particular building. There could be, when we're serving the public and the initial phases, there might be some spacing spacing lines for those places where lines form. You know, the one thing to keep in, two things to keep in mind in thinking about how we will operate in office spaces is that the governor has said, and rightfully said, that there needs to be some social distancing throughout the summer and into the fall. Now that can take different forms, right? But that applies to our own employees, and it also applies to the public when we serve them in our offices. And then through May, you know, there's a 10-person rule, not to have more than 10 people in confined spaces. That number may change, but I think limiting the close interaction between persons, whether it's employees or the public, is going to be something that sort of overrides our decisions in the early phases of returning to office.
Will the commission consider taking people's temperatures as they enter the building for the staff or the public?
Well, we've talked about that, but you know, we haven't made any decisions on that. But you know, that can be perceived as a, you know, personal space invasion, and so it's not a decision that we would make lightly. I mean, they do make apparatus that you just walk by, and you can get a temperature taken by walking by it. They range from $10,000 to $20,000. So we'd have to be certain that was a really good aspect of our preventive measures before we would make a decision.
Will Game and Parks Commission require employees or the public to wear masks when they enter the building?
You know, as we answer these questions, I think you need to remember that things are changing constantly over time, and that it's hard for us to look too far ahead because we can't entirely predict what the situation is going to be more than about 30 days out. So things that we might do initially might be longer lasting than we thought, or they may not be. And with that said, if we start increasing the use of our offices by our own employees in the near future, then we will require masks to be worn.
Once we are able to return to the office, will there still be in-state travel restrictions?
Well, you know, in all the things that we're talking about, you know, we've been in close contact with the regional health directors as well as the governor's office. And currently, Nebraska's regional health directors are asking to try to limit travel between health districts in the state. Most people don't know where those boundaries are. They're fairly large boundaries, actually. So we would keep that in mind in the near future, and as we do with everything else, we make those decisions in consultation with the recommendations from the health professionals at the time.
Could the new employee orientation week outing still be this year? We use masks and do social distancing?
Perhaps if it's Winterfest.
If the science shows that people are immune once they have had COVID-19, is it possible that the commission will do a testing policy, even if it's not required by the state, to let people know they are immune and very unlikely to be carrying the virus to work?
Well, I don't think that anyone at this juncture can make supported assumptions by the medical community that there's going to be immunity from having acquired the virus, and if there is immunity, how long it would last. So those are a lot of unanswered questions in the medical realm right now. So again, we will use the best scientific available evidence of what's happening at the time, but I don't foresee us doing any testing that wasn't in coordination or conducted in coordination with other health professionals in the state and under state direction and guidance.
How is the agency preparing for a possible second wave of the pandemic?
You know, we're learning a lot about how to not only operate efficiently, but also serve the public in the current situation. And if we have any kind of second peak, if you will, or increased transmissions this fall that required other actions, we'll utilize the things and techniques and protocols that we're using now and learning about now. So we're learning a lot. And we're, for example, you know, we learned a lot about how to go about making a change that was needed to work with the governor's office and others to start or quit selling non-resident turkey permits. So if we were in a position to have to adjust and permit sales for other species for big game in the future, we'd already know a lot about how to go about that. We are preparing now for alternative methods, perhaps, of checking big game animals this fall. There's other things that we're planning right now that would be useful if we need to next fall, on how to, if we can increase our activities by the public that we serve, we learn also how to decrease them if necessary.
So I have a follow-up question on that that's related to the concern of a possible second wave in the fall, and how we might what plans we might have to address if there's a need for a cancellation of the season in advance or when it begins. And this is coming from, I think, some of the folks that do a lot of the customer service work that think hunters are going to ask about planning their trips now for the fall, and if we have any plans to do anything.
Well, right now we're operating, and will continue to operate in the near future under the assumption that we should allow applications for big game permits as normal for both residents and non-residents. And we do not have information right now that would cause us to do anything different than that at this juncture. You know, we are approaching the application time periods. We would make adjustments later if it became apparent that we needed to. And if that was refunds, we've got experience with that now with turkey permits. If it would mean any kind of restrictions or non-residents, we know how to go about that. If it would mean closing certain kinds of facilities to discourage travel, we know how to go about that. So I think, again, as I said, as we go through what we're going through right now, we're teaching us how we would react if we needed to do something similar in the future.
Next question. We're getting to the questions talking about opening back up for business. When will overnight camping be allowed again?
Well, right now we have actually we have a plan developed that phases increased activity by the public in our park system. And on the camping front, you know, the reason that we restricted camping at this juncture to self-contained recreational vehicles is because those sites that they reserve are 25 feet apart, so it conforms to social distancing. There's a limit on the number of people at a campsite. It conforms to the 10-person rule. And the other thing that it does is it does not put pressure that we can't sustain on our infrastructure at this juncture. For example, right now, we do not have shower houses open. We do not have modern toilets open. We have vault toilets open and dump stations. So we have to be in a position where we can serve the increased users and the type of users that we would have come to our parks if we opened up camping to first come, first serve, and to tent camping and truck topper camping and all of that. We're just not ready for that. We also don't have near the temporary employees in the park system hired that we normally would have hired in May and June. So we're not ready for that, but we're planning for it. And so I can't provide a date right now because the date is, these dates as we move forward are determined by our preparedness and also by the virus itself. And we can do a better job of figuring out when we'll be prepared. And hopefully we're getting better as a whole, as a nation, as a state, on figuring out what the virus is going to do.
How soon do you expect the cabins to be opened, given as health directives continue to potentially change?
Well, as we look at cabins, it's not necessarily difficult to contain to the smaller number of people in a confined space rule. Or the social distancing rule if it's families that are using those. But on the other side of things, we have unique challenges with cabins, and that's mainly protecting the health of our employees, such as our housekeepers, and protecting the health of the next occupants after someone else has been in a cabin. So on the sanitation front, we're looking at what hotels are doing, and they're actually doing a variety of things right now. So we haven't settled on a complete plan on how we would be able to sufficiently sanitize those cabins. Some of the things we're looking at is alternatively only renting certain cabins with a long time period in between guests. The time itself helps on the sanitation. Also, we're looking at what some hotels are starting to do with a misting procedure that holds a lot of promise. So when we can make them safe for people, the guests and our employees, that's when we'll be able to determine the date.
We understand that most efforts are focused primarily on our programs and events that we're thinking about resuming. Has there been any discussion of when outside organizations or groups might be allowed to plan events within our park system?
Well, I think that as we look at the factors that will need to be considered when we create dates for resuming our interactive activities in the park system, we'll essentially use the same kind of criteria for those activities that someone else is sponsoring. I do think we have a unique responsibility to make sure that that we're not inviting people, no matter who's sponsoring the event, into a situation in our parks that wouldn't be safe for them or our employees. So it'd be on the same timelines.
I'm going to now go to we've got a few more questions here that I can ask, but I see I've got Joe Momsen has a question. Joe, do you want to unmute yourself and let us know your question? I think maybe you're on the phone.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello, can you hear? Oh, perfect. Jim, I just had questions about, I've been trying to be proactive and obtain some cleaning supplies like wipes and disinfectant sprays, things of that nature. And all of my resources are back ordered until August.
Well,
I don't know if,
we can look into
ahead.
that. There are some resources through state government that we might be able to tap into to suit your and other service center offices' needs.
Okay, perfect.
So what I'd like you to do is to contact Angie and give her a list of the kinds of supplies that you're in need of and what kind of, I guess I'll call it, what we use for masks is a burn rate. How many, do you need in a
Okay,
week's time or a month's time or whatever.
sure.
We'll help you out.
Okay, perfect. How do I mute this again?
There should be a microphone icon that you can push somewhere on your screen.
Or if you're just quiet, we won't notice. All right, I'll go to another question. Question about planning meetings. We had a question that one of our staff is trying to figure out if they should continue planning a February 2021 meeting that would involve participants from Iowa and Kansas that we would host in Nebraska.
Well, if that's a meeting that's, I'd say co-sponsored with another entity besides the Nebraska Game and Parks, and especially if it's co-sponsored by Iowa and Kansas administration in any way, then obviously you need to make that decision in concert with discussions that you have with the sponsors. You might end up with a different answer than, and of course it depends on factors I don't know about, how many people we're talking about, what the venue is, so on and so forth. So since we're a host state, I guess I'd probably like to have more discussion with the questioner about some of those things and see if they've consulted with the other people who care about the conference before I would offer any definitive opinion on that.
With many people working from home, we had one question submitted that they've heard from some they're overwhelmed with work and others who are struggling in finding items to work on. And this person suggested a potential exchange site on our intranet where people could share work items that need to be done. And then people who are looking for work would have the ability to respond and help out.
Well, that sounds like a good idea if we could make it work, but there are some considerations that we want to take into account. One is that people are, in many cases, paid with different funding sources that can only be used for certain kinds of work. So, there's questions like that. So it'd be sort of there'd have to be some parameters that were put forward. Also, anybody who and I can understand how this could be the case. I think, as time marches forward, it's more likely the case. In the earlier days of our working from home situation, I don't think there were too many people that felt underworked. But, that can change over time. The first thing you need to do, though, whether we don't want anybody to feel overwhelmed. And certainly it's not the best situation if you're underwhelmed, so to speak. So the first thing you need to do is to talk to your supervisor. And also if people that feel overwhelmed can be under great stress. And you need to also talk to our human or HR division, talk to Angie, because, there's ways that we can help people that are feeling very stressed out, and there's a lot of help in that regard. Talk to your supervisor about your workload in either case. And another thing to keep in mind is that now is a really good opportunity for certain people to get additional training online. The Nebraska Game and Parks Commission subscribes to every online training course that the state of Nebraska offers. And there's some really good video instruction online. So that's another opportunity, is to take some of your time for training. So the main thing is work this out with your supervisor and with HR, but we will consider whether there's any opportunities also for the general idea that you had about WorkShare.
I'm looking to see if we've got other questions in the queue. I don't have any right now. I still want to encourage anybody on here, if you've got a question, to let us know, and so you can ask it directly. I do have some other, some other questions. The first one here, I know that you mentioned the cleaning supplies issue, but this one was, will Game and Parks provide hand sanitizer along with cleaning supplies for staff as we move forward into more opening up?
Yeah, the answer is yes, and we will make sure that that we have supplies for that. On the cleaning front, I might mention that in the Lincoln office, our maintenance personnel are constantly cleaning touch surfaces in the building, but also there's deep cleaning that occurs every weekend. We want to make sure that we're doing similar types of things at all of our office structures, and I'll make sure that there's people that will be looking at that. But right now we do have, some people, of course, working in the offices, and in the Lincoln office, those people are doing some of their own, daily wiping of touch surfaces in their work area, and so on and so forth.
If staff cannot fully working remotely, meaning that, there are times they need to be in the office for certain things, will there be that ability to work both in the office for part of the time and other times to work from home?
Yes, that's a possibility. And, I know that in the Lincoln office right now, we actually have two different situations like that. In some cases, people are just working in the office a couple days a week because they have things that they can more efficiently do in that setting. And then they're working from home the rest of the time. Also, we have divisions like budget and fiscal division, where people are rotating in and other people are rotating out, so that we can keep good social distancing and not have too densely packed workforce. So those kinds of things can be done. And if there's places where people have ideas for doing it that we're not doing it, or that want to do that in the future, they just need to bring that suggestion forward, and we'll consider them on a case-by-case basis.
This is a quiet crowd with questions, Jim.
It is a quiet crowd. It's because it's late in the afternoon. That morning crowd, boy, they were
fired up. What are the impacts to the agency funds from the COVID-19 emergency?
Well, it's a mixed bag, I guess I'd put it that way. As a reminder, we're primarily a cash-funded agency, as opposed to a lot of other state agencies that are primarily generally funded with general funds derived from tax dollars. So our general fund proportion of our total budget's about 13%. So we're mainly cash funded, and our revenue streams go into specific cash funds depending on the source of the revenue. So the broader cash funds that we have are game cash that's populated with dollars from fish and hunt permit sales and from federal aid. And then you have our park cash fund that's populated by funds from, in-park fees like camping fees and also park entry permits. Then you have the Habitat Cash Fund populated by dollars from Habitat stamp sales and so on. We have some other cash funds; those are the largest ones. But for as an example, on the game cash fund side, well, first it's important to know that we have reserves in all of those cash funds, and so times like these show how important it is to be able to have cash reserves. We have 3 to 6 month operating cash reserves in each one of those funds. So in the case of game cash, we lost near $1 million from stopping sale of non-resident turkey permits. However, we gained some of that back by increased sales on resident turkey permits, and we have had a significant increase in fishing permit sales. This is an imprecise generalization, but we're probably about $500,000 down in that realm right now. The Habitat cash, we lost a few $100,000 from Habitat stamps that weren't purchased by non-resident turkey hunters or were refunded. But our hunt fish combination sales are up, which means Habitat stamp sales will be up at some point. So the park cash is the funding, the fund that has taken the largest hit in decreased funding revenue streams because we've had no camping, and camping fees are a couple $1 million a month this time of year, and also because we've had no swimming pools open, horseback riding open, etc. We have seen an increase actually in park entry permit purchases. So, but we're a couple $1 million down on the park cash side compared to where we usually are, would like to be. But then again, with camping starting up, at least RV camping, we'll be starting to get revenue streams again from $500,000 to $600,000 a week. So the bottom line is that so far we don't see conditions that would cause us to lay off permanent employees or anything of that nature, but we need to manage through these losses in revenue, and I think we can manage through them.
All right. Caitlin Eller, I know you had a question. Do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and put your camera on? You can ask your question.
Okay, I do have a question. So one thing that we kind of deal with at Pawnee is we oversee 6 different lakes. And so, most of them were previously walk-in camping only. And everybody that camps there knows that for the most part. And so we're kind of trying to prepare if someone comes in and pulls up on someone else's spot and then someone else pulls in. These are unmanned areas. So how do we go about avoiding this, like having, someone just come in and take someone's site, even though their name's on the site, they're going to pull in anyway. How do we prevent that, or how do we resolve the conflict between the campers, at all our unmanned areas?
I'll suggest that we have a electronic huddle. I usually use the term huddle for a small gathering of people that are collaborating on a solution to an issue, but I have to be careful about talking about huddles when we're socially distancing. So I'm talking about electronic huddle with you and the superintendents and Jim Swenson in law enforcement, and we'll work out a solution. I'm not positive of what the total solution might be. Some of it might be as simple as signage, but it also might mean we need to move some personnel from somewhere else to those sites that you're talking about, so that we do have some people there.
And then we got Amber Shills. You had a question relating to SRAM. There, Amber?
Yes, sorry. We were discussing and wondering, Jim, what is your greatest concern for the challenges that we face as an agency going forward? I guess one of us said, what keeps you up at night?
Well, all of us go through this kind of thing, and I think we need to keep the attitude that we are resilient. We have been as an agency. We are innovative, and the only thing that we can do in times like this, besides know that we are all in this together and we have a really good support group with each other, is to understand that we need to make the best decisions we can every day. And so whether that's about our personal well-being, about our families, whether it's about decisions we're making that affect the public or affect our own work staff. And that's what I try to do, is work with all the good collaborators that I can, both in other state agencies, with the governor's office, with the administrators at Game and Parks, and our commissioners, and develop plans and protocols that number one, protect the health and well-being of our employees. And right along with that is not inviting the public to come and participate in activities in our park system or our wildlife areas or our offices in any way that we could foresee would be unsafe. So I'm sleeping every night, but I do worry a lot about our employees, and I want to make sure that you're all safe.
Going through to make sure. I don't have any more questions at this time. With that, I think we can probably wrap up, but let's see if we can take the opportunity here for everybody to open up their cameras. You can open up your video too, and let's see if we can break Zoom. All right. Wow. We've got a bunch of people on here. I see people in their cars. I see people that look like they're setting in the lake in Colorado. Awesome. Well, it's good to see you all, and thank you all for all you're doing. we'll go ahead and wrap this meeting up for the day. I'll put up the sort of the ending one. If you have additional questions, please know that you can still send those to us through Sherry. We'll continue to work to answer your questions if you have new ones or something else comes up. Thank you. We hope you all found this valuable. We will be sharing an evaluation with everybody from these meetings. Actually, we'll send them to everybody at Game and Parks in case we have people that go back and view one of these Zoom meetings if they were unable to find one to participate in. And we really do want your feedback. We want to see this as video conference format as a tool we can continue to use in the future. And the more information we can gather from you about how it works and what doesn't work, the better we can make this for everyone. So thank you all.
Great job,
Thanks.
Tim. Great
Thanks,
job,
Tim.
Tim.
Thanks.